Welcome to Spiritual Truths with your host, Kerry Marie. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Charlie Seaman. He's an international psychic medium, and it's his second podcast on Spiritual Truths. Today, Charlie is going into detail and talking to you about the 7 principles of spiritualism. This will help you with your life in general as a guide, along with that, with your spirituality. Please like this podcast, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new future exciting podcasts that we'll be presenting to you. Blessings and love, Kerry Marie. Hi, Charlie. It's so good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you again, Kerry.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me your time, because I know you're a very busy man, and it's the second time you've actually supported Spiritual Truth. So thank you so much, and I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this. So today we're discussing the 7 principles of spiritualism. But I'll just start off with saying that people don't know what spiritualism is. Some people do, some don't. So you're a spiritualist, and I'd like for people to understand what is when it's spiritual. What is spiritualism?
What is spiritualism?
Because I see it as a religion, philosophy, and science. That's what I was told in my training. Yeah.
Well, it is a religion, a philosophy, and a science, because we subscribe to all three manners of thinking. Now, in truth, excuse me, spiritualism, a lot of spiritualism is a matter of opinion, and that being
Right.
your own personal opinion
Right.
of life as you see it.
Right.
We don't have hard and fast rules in spiritualism. We
Right.
don't have a creed, a dogma.
Yes.
We have the 7 principles of spiritualism that we apply to our lives in whatever way we individually understand them.
Oh, I love that. It sort of feels quite free. It's not too restrictive, because I was brought up like a strict Catholic. I was very restrictive. If you do that, you'll go to hell. And it was like scary. So it's more of a free, open way of looking at it.
Just the other day, I was told that I was bound for hell because of my beliefs.
Goodness.
Oh, well.
Wow.
And that's okay. That's okay, because in one of our principles, the 5th one, personal responsibility, we are responsible for what we do, what we think, and we don't judge ourselves or other people by that.
No, and no one, I don't, I think it's more hell on earth, and Spirit often says to me, there's no such thing as hell, which is, I've heard that from Spirit quite often. They say no such thing as the devil, no such thing as hell, and I've got a lot of peace around that.
If we go to the beginning of the first principle, which is the fatherhood.
So there's 7 principles, isn't there?
Yes, there are 7 principles.
And where do they come from? Where do these principles come from before we...
Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to a very famous medium by the name of Emma Harding Britton, who gave us the 7 principles as they were given to her by the spirit of a gentleman by the name of Robert Owen. Robert Owen was an Englishman who was alive in the early 1800s, and he was born into wealth. Excuse me, a little bit of a cold here. He was born into great wealth, and he recognized in his linen mills the injustice of humanity. He recognized the lack of education of people. He recognized that the people who had wealth pretty much had everything. And they were in control of all of the people who worked for them. So much control that even many of those mill owners would pay their people in tokens. And the tokens were only valuable in the company's stores.
Wow.
So they would set the prices, they would set the products, you got what you got. Robert Owen did not believe that was fair, and in the late 1820s established that every child of every employee will go to school. And that was the beginning of spiritualism.
In a big
Now, Robert
heart, eh?
Owen,
In a big heart.
well, he recognized man's humanity
Mm,
or inhumanity.
mm,
And he also recognized that the only way forward was to empower people
mm,
to make their own choices, to make their own decisions. And
mm,
we are responsible for the outcome
mm.
because we take that personal responsibility.
Okay, so he was this amazing man, and when he died, he channeled. It was. Did he become a medium, or what did he become spiritual, or
Well, he became spiritual in his own senses. He
right
gave the principles to Emma Harding Breton
after he died?
after he died.
Mm,
Now, to note, two of his sons, one of his sons moved to America
mm,
and became a founding board of directors member of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington.
mm-hmm.
And another son was the first president of Purdue University.
Wow.
So he empowered his own children to strive to be the best that they could be
Oh.
without trying to follow someone else's rule, trying to
Mm.
follow someone else's way of life. We are asked to create our own life.
I just got valuable. I just heard valuable for them to be valuable in their own
Well,
right.
what is valuable to you
Yeah.
and what is valuable to me are two totally different things.
Mm, mm,
And that's perfectly fine. We don't have to agree. We don't have to see life from the same viewpoint. The only viewpoint that we need to look at life from is a human perspective. That you have as much right to
mm.
do and believe what you believe as I do, even though we may be different.
It's really interesting because I find this weird. I'm hearing the words from spirit noise and bitterness. And I find that some people won't allow, they have to push their beliefs and their thoughts and opinions on you. And they get quite emotional and emotive about it.
Mhm.
And they don't, I don't know what it is, but they won't allow others to have their own mind to a point where my father came through. I was going through some anxiety and it came through a really good medium. Amazing. A German medium. I was on SNUI. And I felt my dad and he felt him. So I'm in New Zealand, he's in Germany. He felt my father. And he
Mhm.
brought my dad through, it's definitely my father. And he said, "You're getting really anxious. And your father's telling you that people's opinions are just their opinion, it's their perspective. But stop taking it on as fact and go your own way and believe in what's right for you." And it was making people's other opinions really threw me, and I think this can throw people because I think the thing about opinions and judgment, it's can be really skew off, and you're not allowing others to be who they are. And I think that it can cause I think it causes a lot of wars and all sorts of things, doesn't it? Within yourself and then in the greater world.
The difficulty with people pushing their opinions on us is that we have a natural tendency to not accept someone else's dogma.
Right.
Many of us come into spiritualism later in life,
Mm,
after the age of 50, because we have recognized that what we have heard throughout our lifetime, it never resonated.
mm,
We had questions that the other religions could not or would not answer,
mm,
legitimate questions about life. And to just state one small example of that are the way that some people pursue Christianity. Now, Christianity as a religion is fine, I'm sure, but I never felt the calling there.
mm,
I was actually anti-Christian for a very long time for my own personal reasons. And I began to recognize that those who pushed it dogmatically, that theirs is the right way, the only way, were essentially condemning everyone else except
mm.
themselves.
It's very judgmental.
Human beings are very judgmental. That
Mm,
is a human trait. Even
mm.
within spiritualism, we judge each other.
Absolutely. Oh, I totally agree. Do you know, going back to Christianity, because I had this love for Jesus and I wanted to meet Jesus. And back when I was Catholic, he turned up in this amazing dream. I had this beautiful presence above me, this huge presence. And he came in and he was amazing. I was having real problems with my son. Um, real trouble. He's a young child. And he came in and he just came with
Mhm.
so much love. And he was not judgmental at all. And he told me there was daughter of little faith. And he said, what's faith? And I started saying, believing in God and going to church. He said, no, it's not. He said, faith is doing things for other people and not telling anybody else you did it. And he told me how much he loved my son. It's in my book. But after that, I woke up and I could see this beautiful, amazing presence. My little son, who was 2, said, Mummy, Jesus was in our house last night. And
Oh.
then his godmother came down and gave us Jesus Bless His House. Now, I was led to a GP who told me to go to this other GP who did kinesiology, and it was the answer to my son. It was huge. He had these intolerances and he's quite hyperactive. Long story. And the Jesus that I met, I was in my early 20s, was completely different from the Jesus I was taught. He was not judgmental. He was just full of love. And what he was saying to me is that you don't need to let anybody else know what you're doing because spirit can see you and enjoy it. So I still had this love of Jesus, but it wasn't in the Christian way.
Mhm. Jesus, to me, was one of the most wonderful human beings
Yes,
in the history of the world who did so much good and tried to do so much good. My own personal difficulty with Jesus is the Jesus of the Bible,
right.
because I don't believe in a wrathful, vengeful God.
I don't either. I don't either.
No. And if we go to that first principle of spiritualism, which says the fatherhood of God, we don't define it.
The fatherhood of God. So that's the first one. We're going to get into this principle. So number
Yeah.
1 is the fatherhood of God. It's the first principle. Okay. So 7. That's the first one. Okay. So you can explain that a bit more.
Well, it never made any sense to me until a medium one night in circle said these words: to the God of your own understanding.
Wow.
And that to me opened the door,
Mm-hmm.
because that gave me the freedom to be exactly where I was in my understanding. I have always believed in a higher intelligence.
Mm.
I have always believed in the power of the universe. I have, in my own way, come to the conclusion that my God of my understanding is exactly the universe. All of the physical laws, all of the natural laws, to me, are God in action.
Absolutely.
And if God created you and he created me, he also created some horrible people.
Yes.
And we sit here on earth worshiping God in his perfection, when is evolution God? Is that God in action? Is that God trying to do better, to move away from his imperfections? That is where the matter of opinion comes in as to the God of your understanding. To me, when we pass out of this life, we look at the mirror of our own soul.
Yes,
We
we
know
do.
what we've done. We know what we've said. We know what we've thought.
Mm.
And we are the ones who have to account at that
It,
point.
yes, which is, I'm going to go back to Christine Pett Spencer's podcast about near-death experiences, um, Pathways to Peace. It's incredible. She talks a
Mhm.
lot about that in her book. Yeah.
And when it gives you that kind of a freedom,
Yeah.
it becomes a philosophy because you're saying to yourself, there was a gentleman very active in spiritualism in the early days, actually before the birth of spiritualism, Andrew Jackson Davis.
Mm.
And he said, I do not want to be the man I am today, tomorrow.
Wow.
I hope to be a better man. I
Wow.
hope that I have learned. And the day after that, I hope to do better again.
Wow.
And really, that when we think about what that means to us individually, it gives us the freedom to screw it up. If we make a mistake, it's not the
Mm.
end of the world. It's a
Mm.
mistake. If you've made a mistake, atone for it.
Mm.
Simple. Let it go.
Mm.
Grow from the experience.
Mm.
That's what spiritualism is all about. It is your soul. It is my soul growing to its potential.
Potential. And so the fatherhood of God is like a creative force. It's where you've come from, a creative
Yes.
energy.
However, we understand it. Because who of us can truly say, I know God?
Mm. Not
You
fully.
might think you know,
Not
you
fully.
know what
Yeah,
you're God. But the truth, where do we find the truth? We find the truth in the next world,
you
not
do.
here.
Absolutely. I always say to people, I don't know because I'm not there. I often say that to people. So we'll go on to the next one. It's creative force that creates us, the brotherhood of man. I love that one. Personally, I love the brotherhood of man.
You are my sister, Carrie.
You're my brother.
Exactly. And if I was a black man, a Chinese man, an Indian man, I'd still be your brother.
Mm,
If I was a gay man, I would be your brother. If I
mm,
was transgendered, I would be your brother or sister. You see what I mean? Is that we must accept humanity in all of its forms,
mm,
all of its intelligences. Even those who come into this world with brain injuries or defects, Down syndrome children, people born with cords wrapped around their neck, so their mind isn't quite there. They're still our brothers. They're still our sisters. We must give them the same respect that we give our own family
and that
because we
comes
are
also
all
to living things, isn't it? Like plants and animals.
the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
Man would simply recognize that we are physically a byproduct of this earth.
Mm,
We are mediumship in action. Life is mediumship in action. You're
mm,
taking a thin gas called oxygen, you're inhaling it, and it's keeping you and I alive.
mm.
How does that work? That is mediumship to me of a different form.
So the brotherhood of man to me is recognizing everybody as part of, you're all connected and you love everybody equally, sort of thing. It's like an equal love in a way, isn't it?
Well, we don't have to call it love, but we must call it respect for life
Okay, all right, not love. I
because
say
we're not going to love everyone.
no, we're not going to. It's just going
Oh,
to
of
say
course.
that's not quite right. Okay, no, we're
I'm
not
not
going to
that
have
great a
fun.
human being that I can love everybody.
Oh yes, that's true. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Phew. Okay, no, but we've got to respect everyone. So also to me, the brotherhood of man, always how I interpret it myself, is always like do unto other as they do unto self. It's like it's
Mhm.
helping others, helping, like having this responsibility towards others. That's what I saw it like, doing what you can to empower others, encourage other, be there for others. Is that how you see it? Or whether it's
It is. And
human, man, animal,
one of
uh,
my core beliefs is do not do unto others that you would not do to yourself.
yes.
These are my brothers. These are my sisters. This is life. This is humanity. These are other things are a product of the earth. Why should we destroy something else
Mm.
for our own advantage? Emma Harding Britton once said that her definition of evil was to take away someone else's free will.
Wow. Wow. How often do you see that in the world?
all the time. And don't we all do it?
Wow.
Don't
That
we all do it?
restriction, that restriction.
Yeah.
It's really
Thinking
interesting
about it.
that I was brought up in a very strict, controlled family, and I rebelled against that because something inside me, and my mother was like, couldn't control me, and it really got to her. And I had this thing, I just didn't want to be told what to do. I couldn't
Mm.
cope with it. It was something really inside me. Yeah.
Same situation that I had earlier in life.
Mm,
I did not get along well with my father, who was a Sunday school teacher, and I
mm,
rejected Christianity because of that.
mm,
Now I have a respect for Christianity that it deserves, although I do not feel like I am Christian. I am spiritual. And spirituality, because it doesn't demand that we have a specific set of beliefs, gives us the freedom to select what is right for self.
I love this. I never knew this, Charlie. I sort of coming from a very strict Catholic family, part of me sort of found the sort of the principles and some of the rules and everything a bit hard to deal with, if I'm really honest. And I'm a bit of a free spirit. So this is amazing. And no one's ever told me this, that the principles is for what's right for you.
What is right for you? You see,
Mm,
you don't have to believe what I believe.
mm,
We can certainly agree to disagree
yeah.
and be friends and not judge each other by our beliefs
Mm,
or the color of our skin or our gender or our nationality or our politics.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, in my world, everyone deserves a right to live. Everyone deserves to have food on the table and a roof over
mm,
their heads, no matter who
mm.
they are, no matter who they are. Everyone should be treated fairly, but we don't do that in our
You
world.
don't, because
We
it's a
divide
power.
ourselves.
It's power and control.
Well, it's power, it's control, it's saying, well, I have a country and I will defend my flag forever and ever. And all the people jump up and go, yes, let's go to war to defend our country. And there they are following some mad fools. And all of a sudden, we're not empowered anymore because we've given it up
Mm.
to our religion, to our politics, to our countries, our flag wavers. To me,
It's actually, just something that's came to me. Like people can get that in relationships. They can give their free will away in relationships. They're being controlled by another person. But I
certainly,
just also, I've got this lovely friend and she's always telling me that it doesn't matter what people think about you. It's none of your business, Wayne Dyer said. But she also said if you're a people pleaser as well, if you're a people pleaser, trying to get approval from everybody else, in a way, you're giving away your own ability to be empowered to think for yourself,
well,
to be who you are, because you're trying to get their approval.
you are exactly right about that. We're
Mm,
trying to get someone's approval by giving up ourselves
mm,
and what we feel is right for ourselves.
Interesting.
To do that,
There's a lot of opinions lately. Like there's a lot of ever since COVID, there's been a lot of people with their very strong thoughts and opinions, and I say to my husband, I can't handle it because it's been pushed upon me. Let me think for myself.
mhm, we have to turn and walk away
Yeah, just say, well, you can think what you like, but mm,
and remember who we are.
you don't have to
But
get
same
angry
time,
about it either.
at the same time, we have to maintain an open mind
Yeah,
to find out what our next step is.
yeah, that's
Perhaps
true.
our beliefs will change.
Yeah, that's what I find. I don't tend to think this way. I do tend to sort of think, actually, I did think like that. Now I'm thinking differently. I'm now going to move on to the Brotherhood of Man, the Communion of Spirits and Ministry of Angels. Can you explore that a little bit more, which is Communion of Spirits and Ministry of Angels? What's that all about?
Well, to me, that is about moving our minds inward to where we create a place within us where we become aware of the spirit. The spirit is more than just the spirit world. The spirit is part of us. It's part of them. We are part of that collective universe of energy. And when we commune with spirit and the angels, we are going into that quiet place within where we're looking for some guidance, some love, some support to get some kind of a surety of the direction we're going. And often things will just happen. I know over my time, and in the last podcast we did, I've told you some of the stories, but the communion of spirit and the ministry of angels, when I became a spiritualist, so many things happened to me that I could not understand or believe. Things like spirit people materializing in my house, who were later identified from photographs. How does that happen in this time of crisis? They know that our life is here and our life is finite. We will live on to become fully part of their world when we move into the world of spirit. But yet, if we listen the way Einstein listened, or Beethoven, we can get those gems of wisdom that make our life make sense.
So, interesting enough, I just want to know the word communion. So what does communion mean to you?
Communion means to be with.
Oh, to be with. Oh, interesting.
Just to be with. To
okay,
sit quietly.
And because it was when I was a Catholic, we got given the body of Christ, so it's been having, supposed to be, we were given the body of Christ. So be with.
Which is physically representative of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
That's fine, because you're accepting, the way I understand that, you're accepting Christ at that point. Now, if we move to Christ for a moment, he who created all that bread and all that fish and did all those healings, what is that?
Mediumship.
Today we call it mediumship. Exactly. It's mediumship that we do. And isn't it amazing that we can recreate that kind of an energy?
So it is. It's fascinating. But communion of spirit means be with spirit. That's what it means, isn't it?
To be spiritual.
And be with spirit.
And be with them. Yeah. And just feel their presence. You see, as you talked about earlier about your dad, when you can feel the presence of the spirit through the medium, then the medium has really achieved something of value for you.
Absolutely.
Not for the medium, but for you, the client.
The client, yes.
You will recognize that life is eternal. And that this is merely a stopping point in our development. Einstein also said, energy is never destroyed. It only changes state. So you and I, and everyone else who listens to this, and everyone else who doesn't listen to this, will live on. And that takes away the fear of death into the unknown. For me.
Well, for most people. And that's why I think Christine wrote her book as well. It does it. So that's why it's called Pathways to Peace.
You see,
for that reason.
The greatest message that I am given by the Spirit is to live this life.
Yes, I do, because I get life is for the living.
Life is for the living. Enjoy it. Don't save it for tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow.
No.
Live it. Enjoy it. Empower yourself and empower others with that kind of a freedom, knowing that, okay, yes, I accept. Someday I have to account for what I've done. So if I've been a horrible person, well, then I will have to atone. We may as well start doing it now.
Exactly. That's why I said to Christine, I said, can we change things now? And, we talked about that. So the next part of that is ministry of angels. So ministry to me is like doing for others. Is that right? The ministry of angels is supporting others, or the work of the angels, or how do you see the ministry of angels part of that?
I see it as going out and consciously doing good works.
Yeah.
Because if we can offer a helping hand to those who are in need, we don't need to judge them for their need.
So it's almost like the earth angel, isn't it? Earth angel
Almost
within.
like being an earth angel. If you've got, if
Mm.
you're empowered to, and I think I will do this one time on Christmas Day, perhaps I will volunteer at the Salvation Army or the
Mm.
Union Men's Gospel in Vancouver and serve Christmas dinner. I'm a pretty good cook.
Are
I'll bring,
you? Oh.
yes, I'll bring my forks, my knives, and I'll help plate up all the food for all those people for whatever reason, life has not been kind to.
Yeah. And you can't judge that. You can't judge
And
that.
no, don't judge it. But I also recognize I have done very well in life. Most of it the hard way, not listening. But I have resources. Should I give back or should I not? Should I just sit here on my little pile or should I help other people?
Mm.
What's the right answer? You see, there was a time in my life when it was all mine. That time of life is now going away
Mm.
because I made that conscious thought. You see, optimism is a choice. Pessimism is a choice. How do you wish to proceed? Is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? How do you feel about yourself and what you share or what you don't share? And
If you're empowered within yourself, I think if you're good within yourself, then you are empowered. I think it starts with yourself and honoring. I think part of being spiritual is honoring yourself. Once you're present with yourself and solid within yourself, then I think you are able to do the ministry of angels work, help others
mhm,
because you're personally sorted and you're empowered. So let's say to start with you, and then you can give out, having
mhm,
that peace within.
it brings that peace.
Mm.
You know, sit back and watch Scrooge's Christmas and how he changed.
Yes.
How Tiny Tim changed that rotten old man. And he saw that light.
So you don't necessarily have to be perfect. It just as long as you start doing to others, it can empower you, can't it?
Well, we can't be perfect.
No.
And we shouldn't, I don't believe we should even try.
Mm.
But I think we should recognize the consequences of our actions. There may be some things that you do in life that you feel mortified about. You never do that again. Well, what did you learn? Did you learn that it was just a mistake? Or did you learn that there was something within your character that says, yeah, I needed to do that. And I found out it wasn't the right thing. Therefore, okay, now I understand why I would not do that again. Or perhaps you were the victim of some kind of a crime. And for some ladies, unfortunately, it's sexual violence. You're a victim. And often I hear, oh, my life is ruined.
Yeah.
Well, it's not ruined. Yes, you had a tragedy. Yes, you need healing. You need time and you need help. But don't consider that your life is ruined.
Definitely not.
Now, now that event certainly has not happened to me. So I don't know from a personal perspective, but I could only imagine that it's a difficult thing to deal with. And also having two daughters, I'm always worried about things like that. Now, what do we do about that? What do we do when a tragedy befalls us? We learn to deal with it through spiritualism. We learn to deal with unpleasant emotions, unpleasant events, and we find our way through it so that we can let go.
Mm.
So often we hear people say, oh, just let it go. Let it go. Um, I had that happen at a funeral where the son of a couple of friends was killed. And he had a difficult life. He was homeless. He became a drug addict. Parents blamed themselves. Eventually, he was run over by a train. Just horrible. At the funeral, someone walked up to the father, patted him on the back, and says, "Hey, man, just let it go."
Oh my gosh,
Well,
that's awful.
how do you do that?
Oh my goodness.
How horrible. What an awful thing to say to
Mm,
the man who's lost his firstborn child.
terrible.
Now, how did that man deal with it? That's the difficult part.
I was taught because I'm a celebrant as well, and I did a lot of grief, learning about grief, and what we were taught, we had a very good teacher. She said our society can't deal with grief. We get people to zip it up. So
Mm,
what happens if someone says something like that? They're actually telling you you're not allowed to express it. You're not allowed to process it. You're not allowed to go through it, and you've got to zip it up, and that makes you feel a lot worse. And that's why some of the
well,
indigenous cultures, like in New Zealand's Māori culture, are very good. They embrace the grief. They embrace the process. And that says a lot about that person that said it to him. And it's the worst thing you could say. I know that as a celebrant as well, and as a
mm,
medium.
I had
Mm.
an upbringing that was very much like that, where you held it all in. And back in 1965, my grandfather died when I was 12. And I really didn't feel a whole lot. I don't think I really understood what death was at that point. But we didn't talk about it at home. He was my he was my favorite relative. I was his favorite grandchild. But we never processed it until I came into spiritualism. And I thought it would be nice if I would go to visit their grave in Ottawa, which was 300 miles from where I lived at the time. So I went there around 2010, 45 years later, and I found the grave. And as soon as I recognized that it was my grandparents' grave, I stand there, I looked at it, I totally broke down in tears, completely unexpectedly. No feeling, no thought, no. Suddenly I'm bawling my eyes out for the loss. 45 years later. Well, a couple of hours later, I felt so free.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
recognized that freedom, that I had finally let go of something that I didn't even know that I had.
100%. Because grief is the most consistent of all companions if not dealt with.
We in all worlds should teach courses on grief in
Absolutely.
high school. How do you process? What are the stages of grief? How do you learn to let go? How do you learn to justify? How
Or
do you learn?
release. Release. I feel letting go I feel release or process it or allow.
But you
No,
can't just
allow.
command it.
No, you can't. You can't. Like anything in life, you can't. So I just want to move on now
Yeah.
to the number 4, which is the continuous existence of the human soul, which is a fourth principle.
Mm, wonderful principle. Continuous existence of the human soul. From the scientific point of view, let's come back to Einstein. Energy only changes state. Now, if that is true, whether you believe in past lives or not, it means that we were something before we were this. We are something now, and we will be something once again. And my best example of the continuous existence of the human soul would have been one of those occasions when my great grandmother materialized in my house. She'd been dead for 64 years. I had never seen a picture of her. Yet I knew who she was, and I knew she'd come back to tell me that she'd come back for my mother, who had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I took mom to the doctor 6 months later, and she got her terminal diagnosis. And I said, "Have you got a picture of your grandmother? I've never seen one."
Mm.
And she pulled out the same lady. I had a witness to that event, and I gave her the photo a couple months later. And she said, "Oh, that's the lady who appeared in your games room a few months ago."
It's amazing. It's wonderful, isn't it? It's just
64
wonderful.
years later,
I know.
64 years.
Personally, I do believe in past lives. And my podcast recently with Monique Vanderbilt was about past lives.
Mhm.
And personally, I do. So, and the reason I was always unsure of it, it's only my own personal belief, but because the evidence I have with it was like huge evidence. It wasn't just I think. I had this
Mhm.
evidence in spirit, and I just absolutely know.
Well, I suppose in a sense, I came into spiritualism in 1969
Mm,
when I was given evidence of a past life by the Spirit. I
mm,
didn't recognize it at the time,
mm.
not at all. But I did find evidence of it 40 years later in Scotland.
It's huge. It's amazing.
And we also need to recognize about past lives, or my own personal opinion, whatever I was in that lifetime, who was one of those truly horrible people, whatever I was has no effect on this life here today.
Um, yes and no, because I did a healing on a gentleman, and I didn't know anything about him, and I picked up he'd been a drunken sailor in a past life, and that he'd actually brought alcoholism with him into this life, and that he'd overcome it in this life. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel there's some learning about a past life that you could, yeah, that's what it presented itself. And I remember that was evidential. I don't know. And yes, he was an alcoholic. He told me afterwards. And yes, he had dealt with it. And to me, that was just pure evidence. And
It's
so that's
good,
what
but
Spirit
to
showed me.
me,
They showed me there was a drunken sailor. They said he's overcome it. I didn't know him from Bar Gold. I don't know who he was.
mhm,
And he confirmed it. So that's bringing that energy of something he died from, and he's bringing that energy with him to go through it again in a different way, a different life, but now he's dealt with it.
but that is a disease
Mm.
more than a lifestyle. And I believe that by studying the psychology of past lives can help us explain who we are today. Now,
Yes.
is that a psychological, psychic profile, or is it evidence of a past life? I know that's not the point of our discussion today, but if one might consider the children who are often talked about remembering past lives,
I know.
okay, are they the ones who are remembering, or have they connected with a spirit who's giving those memories? Because we don't have specific evidence of past lives, does not mean they're not true, but it doesn't mean that they're real. It's all a question and a matter of opinion. Again, now, some of us do have good evidence. I have good evidence of a past life of mine. Does it make it true? No, I can't say that. It may be true, but that's a whole another topic for another day.
Oh yeah, I talked about it a lot with Monique actually, and I love it. And I've had lots of different evidence for that myself, but I've
Mhm.
just given one example.
We'll
Um,
talk about that one day.
yeah, but when also the continuous existence of the human soul to me is also not just about past lives, it's also about you continue on and you develop, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
you develop. Now, when we move into the spirit world and we're fresh and we're new there, and by the time we become accustomed and we recognize our imperfections of life, we will eventually move into what Mavis Spatilla, the great medium, would say is worlds within worlds.
Mm.
If we look at it from the Einstein perspective, it is about becoming pure energy. So wherever we are on that scale of, let's say, rough energy to pure energy, we have to accept who we are and where we are.
Mm.
It's not about coming in first or getting there unscathed. It's about living, loving, laughing, recognizing that every one of us has that right and should have that privilege, that we shall only do unto others as we would do unto ourselves. And when we do that, we become better people, I believe. And
And
if that
happier, and happier.
and happier, but
Yeah.
it's a very solid, grounded happiness. It's not just an emotion at that point. It's the understanding. You know, some people will say, well, do you live a happy life? Are you happy?
Mm.
And I examined that for a while and thought, well, no, not really. But then I recognized something else. That's not my goal. My goal is to live a fulfilled life.
Right.
And that's different. If that leads to happiness, I don't, I've had lots of trouble in my life. Some of it's self-induced. Sure, that's just the way life goes. But we don't have to accept that that's the way it is always. You don't have to be born poor to say, well, I'm just poor. You can work and become rich, mind, body, and spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody else say to me once, are you happy? It was a put down because they're a Christian and they're sort of like, are you happy? Yeah, I know that. I was always done in a way that was a judgmental way, and I
Yeah.
could feel that. But I love the way that you said, because some days I am happy in others. Sometimes I'm not. And Christine Spencer talked about, I know I think it's Christine Spencer talked about as well, is that it's okay to have human emotion. You're not always going to be
It
happy.
is.
Yeah. And
It's
sometimes
okay.
you feel peace. It's part of life, isn't it?
I, who was one who would never cry, I didn't cry for years and years and years. And then my cat died, and I cried
Mm.
for the first time. And God, it had to have been at least 10 years. And now, if I am in front of an audience of 100 people and I'm standing there on the platform, I've cried in
Oh,
front
so
of
have
100 people. Yeah,
I.
so have I. I was just like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's okay
Mm.
because we're representing the emotion of spirit at
People
that
actually
point.
relate to it. I've actually got really emotional before. And I sometimes in my readings, are not all the time, but it happens and I can feel it and they can feel it as well. It's sort of, yeah, I think people can relate to that emotion, that pure emotion.
Well, you see, emotion is the language of the spirit. That's Eileen Davies. Emotion is the language of the spirit. And if we can accept that language itself, the verbal language, is very limiting
Mm,
to the experience of emotion. When you
mm,
experience love with your husband, your children, with your grandchildren, how do we put that into real words other
yeah,
than I love you? How do you put the feeling and the meaning behind it?
you can't articulate it, can you? You can't.
Language is a poor medium,
Mm,
but yet when you can bring through the spirit of someone who has passed to their loved one, to me, you've made a miracle.
oh, it's a miracle. I always say it's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Every time I do a reading like that, some are better than others. To me, people say I always get so excited because I go, wow. I see because it's a miracle. It's amazing. I know
It's not
nothing.
just,
It's incredible.
it's in the beginning for myself as a medium. I'd stand up in front of the audience. I'd see the spirit people walking around the audience.
Right.
It was really easy to describe them. Yeah, we understand that. Yeah, okay, fine. But I didn't have the emotions
Mm,
in the beginning. I'm a guy. We
mm,
don't cry. We don't have emotions. All the things we're brought up with here in North America. the tough, macho, football watching, beer drinking, hockey playing, all the rest of the things the guys are supposed to do. But yet, that wasn't me anymore. It wasn't me. Once I discovered spiritualism, that there was more to life than a hockey game.
So you connected with yourself. So I'm just going to move on to number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is my personal favorite. I think Brotherhood of Man, the other one is personal responsibility. It's
Yep.
just a key, isn't it? Personal responsibility. I love
Okay.
it.
Because everything we do, we say, we think, we are responsible for.
Mm,
All the good and all the not so good.
mm,
And each one of us has some not so good.
mm,
I don't want to call it bad. I want to talk about human emotion, human impulse, reacting to people who are negative towards us, reacting to people who become incredibly successful for no apparent reason, all of our jealousies, all of our humanity. We are responsible for that. Because if we do something that we don't like, and I think we've already covered this, we atone. We atone by saying, all right, now I understand why I should not do that. That's a step forward. That's not a mistake that you did. It was an experience that you lived, and you choose not to live it again.
yes.
And you don't have to regret it. You don't have to feel guilt about what you've done unless
Mm.
you've taken the free will away from someone else.
I love that. So don't ever take the free will from someone else.
No, let them be
Let it
themselves.
be like that word, that song, let it be.
Sometimes we have to let our loved ones make their own mistakes. You
Yeah,
know it's coming.
I say
Let
that to
them-
people a lot. You can't, but with your children and stuff, I just say you can't live their life for them. They're just going to go through this.
they, because they've got to learn for themselves.
Exactly, because they want you to wave a magic wand and fix everything up in life. And it's just, but it's not what life is. You've got to allow
No,
this. It's all part of, it's all part of being human, isn't it?
it is human. And there is Mark Twain, the great American author, talked about the human condition. What do we do? What do we do in 19th century America when we don't have any food? And there's a loaf of bread sitting there in a store window. It's dark outside and you're starving. You haven't eaten for 3 days and you've got a couple of children. You probably break the glass and take that loaf of bread. Okay, now that's stealing. In the old days, they would cut off your hands. Not here in North America, but in Europe, they would do that. Still do it in some parts of the Middle East. Okay, but what about the fact that that person was absolutely in desperate need? That they had to take something from someone else? Where's the right and where's the wrong? And it really depend on, were you the shopkeeper or were you the transient who had nothing to eat?
Do you know that my great grandmother did something like that? Um, Elizabeth, and her husband died. In those days, if your husband died, you had nothing. He had a man to look after you. And
Yeah,
she was made a convict, and because she stole a loaf of bread to feed her children. And then she went to Australia as a convict and then came to New Zealand and remarried. But yeah, she's one of my great great grandmother. Amazing. The same story.
and if that hadn't happened, you might not be here.
Exactly. I
You
wouldn't be
see,
here.
life has come around again.
Yeah, so I love
Choose-
personal responsibility because I think to me, taking other like above the line is accountable, ownership, responsibility, and below the line is blame, excuse, denial. A
I
lot of
can agree
people
with
go
that.
below the line. So I find when you take this personal responsibility, you feel good about it, and it also creates a freedom. If you're personally
Yes.
responsible, you don't have to worry about the guilt or the angst or the worry and the doubt and blaming someone else. You can actually feel, I feel quite free. I'm responsible for this.
Mhm. Yep.
It's a great thing to do, which helps your vibration and your energy.
It helps you get through life as you understand it.
Yeah, better. So we'll go on to the next one, which is a funny one. I've never liked this one. We're going to talk about things we don't like. So it's compensation and retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth. Brings me straight back to my Catholic upbringing. It's like, scary.
Yeah,
So
well,
can you go into this a bit more? Because that's the one I've had problem with.
it's really that extension of personal responsibility. We are responsible for what we do and what we think. And when we do things that we don't think are right, or we think things that we don't think are right, what do we choose to do about it?
Mm,
Because there will be the enforcement of the law of cause and effect. One of
mm,
my one of my great teachers was a fellow by the name of Glenn Edwards. And he talked an awful lot about natural law, that for every action, there's a reaction, which is
mm,
similar to Einstein again.
mm.
If we push the envelope this way, it's going to come back the same way, depending on the amount of energy that's expended. So if we choose the glass that's half empty, we will be unhappy. If we see the world as being half empty, even from the spirit point of view, then where is the growth? How do we learn to become more than we already are from wherever we're at? You see, to me, it gives us freedom to say with our last dying breath, I'm sorry. Let's suppose, let's suppose a person has done something awful and wound up on death row, and their last thought was, I'm sorry. To me, that is the first stage of them accepting their own grief, their own responsibility. And you cannot deny someone the first step, no matter how horrible they've been.
Do you think sometimes as well, I think about cause and effect? I don't know if you felt that, but have you ever, I felt spirit sometimes saying to me, you shouldn't do that, or this is you could do that, like not telling what to, because I find spirits suggest. Do you think sometimes they guide you? Because I felt guided at times.
Well, I don't believe the other world would ever tell us what to
No,
do.
they don't. They say to me, suggest. They say that. We said suggest. They never tell
Yeah.
you. They say suggest. Yeah.
And it's up to you.
Yes.
And what if the suggestion that you were making was entirely wrong, but you were passionate about it? You
Mm,
felt you had to do it, not considering any consequences at all, something that brought you ultimate pleasure and joy. And you did
mm,
it. And it felt fantastic. And then it felt, oh, but I took free will away from someone else.
mm.
You see, if there's to be retribution, then that implies that we have not learned our lesson.
Yes.
And if we don't learn our lessons about our actions, we're bound to repeat them.
Yes, because like you said to me, things are mistakes and we learn by it and we let it go, but not necessarily because you see, what's that saying? Keep on doing the same thing and expect different results is a sign of
Yep.
madness. So it's
Yep.
like that. So it's like the retribution. Basically, you're just not learning from mistakes. You see people. I see people all the time, and they keep on doing the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And
And
they
that's their
question,
free
like, what's
will,
going wrong? What's
and
going
that's their.
wrong? I can't, you know, I love doing this, but it comes out such awful results. Well, stand back and
So
look
what's
at
the
yourself.
retribution part of it? What does retribution mean?
You will continue to make those same mistakes.
Oh, I see. Because you haven't learned.
You have not learned.
Ah, I see. So that's all part of your free will.
That is part of your free will. It is, not meaning to be sexist or anything, but I know a good number of women who move from relationship to
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
Why? The question is why?
And men do as well.
I suppose as men do, yeah,
I see
from
men
a
do
bigger
that
point of
too. I
view.
can honestly say that.
I stand corrected there. You're right.
Yeah, they
So
do. Yeah.
if we're going to accept that there is retribution, then if we're bound to make the same mistake, that means that we've not thought through what we've already done.
Mm.
A mistake for myself. Let's suppose I went back to smoking cigarettes.
Mm.
Now I know that I can't handle cigarettes. I was an addict, 35 years ago. I can't have one. That's the only way I was able to quit. I can
Mm.
never, ever have one again. And I've managed for 35 years not to do that. Now, what would happen to me if I did?
Mm.
Well, I guess I'd become an addict again. But I made the
Which,
choice.
yeah, I've got a whole podcast about addict actually, so it really talks about that. Also, I want to say sometimes people fall off the bandwagon. So, you may have a tendency to make these mistakes and then you try to be really good and then you stop doing it. And then,
Because we forget.
get back on get back on the path again. So I've got to move on to the last principle, which is eternal progress open to every human soul.
Mhm.
Or is
Which
it
is
every soul? Is it every soul, every human soul?
according to the SNU principles, it is the human soul.
Yeah. So eternal
There's,
progress open to every human soul. Yeah.
yes. And that is to say, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, if you put in an honest effort to be more than you were today, that is progress. You may not have gone very far, but you have accepted that you can change. You don't have to follow the same old, same old. You don't have to follow those who say this is the only way because you lack a way. You have to find that courage within yourself to stand on your own 2 feet and say, here I am. I surrender to the Spirit. Show me and guide me, please.
Do you think also this eternal progress open to every soul, how I read it as well, it's not just progress on earth, but when you go to the other side, to the other dimension, you've also got that free will to progress as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not just here on earth, but thereafter. I'm hearing thereafter.
Thereafter is the most important part, that we don't simply arrive in the spirit world as angels.
Mm.
We're going to arrive as we are, good, bad, or indifferent. What we learn in the next stage of life will guide us to the next stage after that, the worlds within worlds concept of pure energy. You see, we live in a living energy universe.
Mm.
There is enough power in a cubic meter of ocean water to explode this planet.
Mm.
Now, if there is that much power in the universe, we as a human being are merely scratching the surface of what is possible. But that is our development to date.
It is. So I'm just going to wind it up. And I kept on seeing I felt your mum around her, around you a lot. I think I felt her before. And she said, you're a really good son. Very special, very special, very proud of you with your mum.
Thank you.
And she says, it's your choice, it's your choice. But the really interesting thing is, she said, you're going to write a book. I don't know if you've written a book or you're writing a book.
I should be writing a book.
She's talking about writing a book. Now, I've got my spiritual cards, but you're talking about the water. And I don't know if you saw me look over there, but I got this here. It's just not, it said, you've got to read this from your mum. It's a book. See that? And it's got all the water. And it's got the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful sunsets that you encourage me to keep taking photos of. So this is from your mum. Live for the moment, just for today. Your goal is never, ever weak. You're so close to now what you seek. Good things will soon explode in you. Closed doors become new openings too. These challenging times will never stay. So it's interesting. She wanted me to read that to you as well.
Thank you.
Um, And I feel there's also someone, a lady in spirit that she's quite close to as well. I don't know if it's a sibling as well.
No, she didn't have a sibling.
No, you.
Well, oh, do I? Yes.
Yeah, give a sister because she said your sister too.
Yes, that's true.
She said your sister too. She just said then, okay? And she just wants you to know. And she's giving you roses.
Thank you.
Give you roses. So how do she says she just said to me now, it's good here in heaven. It's good here in heaven. Yeah, she's around you a lot. Last time I did the podcast, I could feel her as well. Yeah, I think there's a
Yeah.
likeness between the two of you and personality.
Well, there is.
A
And
strong likeness, yeah.
I have made great progress with both of my parents since they passed.
Yeah, she's got no doubt now. She's got no doubt.
And she always had to in
Yeah, she
this
just
life.
said to me, I have no doubt. Lovely. And she liked lilies as well. Lilies as well.
She did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And she's going to give you some tools. She's telling me she's giving you some tools, which is interesting. So, um, thank you so much for the principles of spiritualism. I'll just run through them: the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, communion of spirits, the ministry of angels, continuous existence of the human soul, personal responsibility, compensation, retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth, eternal progress open to every human soul. And also, you do readings for people, you do demonstration and
Hmm.
private readings. How
Hmm.
can people get hold of you, Charlie?
Oh, they can get a hold of me through charlieseaman@gmail.com.
And can they also email about the 7 principles? Have they got any
Oh,
questions?
yeah. Yes, please. And I do want your viewers to recognize the principles as more than a religion, they become a way of life. And when we truly embrace the principles and try to live our life according to the principles, that's when they come alive. It's not a matter of just reading them and going, yeah, okay, fine, I'll meditate on one. It's about actually living that spiritual experience. As we've said before, to spiritualize everything is really take those principles and let them blossom within you.
Oh,
But
beautiful.
remember, but
Blossom.
remember, the blossoms come in spring. The fruit develops over the summer. It's harvested in the fall, and then it goes quiet again until the cycle repeats. So there's always going to be ups and downs within our spiritualism, but it will help us to make sense of who we are in this life. And that is the most important part of the principle to me. Not the principles themselves, but how we apply to our daily life. We don't have to be, you know, pure and chaste and godly and all the rest of that stuff. You can be you and I can be me, and we can have a blast together because we share that belief of progress open to every human soul, no matter
Thank you
who they are.
so much. I've learned so much from you,
Thank
Charlie.
you.
I've got to go. As you know, I'm being me. I'm going to meet a fashion parade.
Well,
So it's in the
certainly,
local area.
you will be the delight of the eyes at the parade.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Blessings and
Thank
love.
you.